Cradle-to-Cradle first, Chris?
Using Cradle-to-Cradle as a business strategy.
What I wanted to do just at the beginning, because my presentation is basically about one of the Cradle-to-Cradle application tools. And before I do that, many of you might have heard about Cradle-to-Cradle, but might not be familiar with its business benefits or some of the basic principles of Cradle-to-Cradle. So these first two short videos give an introduction from the people who are actually doing it in business, what it means for them, and then the second video is an introductory description of what actually Cradle-to-Cradle is in 4.5 minutes.
Okay. Using Cradle-to-Cradle as a business strategy, we've really just been able to innovate, and we've been able to create differentiation in the marketplace that's helped our business succeed.
We're one of 90 Cradle companies, and we hold 69 certifications to date. So we're the largest global holder. And that's not the thing that means the most to us. I think the thing that means the most to us is that we are embedding this in our company, and our development teams and our marketing people are becoming literate and really able to start to deliver on the vision and on the promise. And I think we are in a period of time where we should all feel very fortunate to be living, because we have one of the greatest opportunities of the century, and that is to design our way out of the past and into a sustainable future.
Ever since we've adopted Cradle-to-Cradle as a design paradigm for our projects, it has helped us a lot. It has enabled us to create superior product, and even now in this crisis, which has hit the real estate market big, we see that those projects where we've gone out to do that, in Park 2020 for example, we're well ahead of leasing in an otherwise complete slow market, and we're currently having investment returns over 30% of our original pro forma. So it really helped our business survive this crisis by differentiating the product we could make. So I'm very pleased I pursued it.
It makes the very best business sense in the world, because it creates that certification mark allows us to differentiate or even to ratify or endorse what we're saying, because there's so much going on right now of, well, I'm greener than you because I'm doing this, and there's a lot of baloney going on out there right now. And Cradle-to-Cradle's 5 measures, 5 categories, make it so much more holistic. So from a business sense, not just from a governance sense relative to behavior, but from having that certification out there that differentiates us in front of our competitors.
You know, it's the funny thing about the business sense of Cradle-to-Cradle is that as we've gone through our development process and commercialization process, although it takes intellectual capital to go figure out the chemistry around the different materials we use, by the time we get done with the process, it's less expensive for us to produce and develop a Cradle-to-Cradle product than it was what we did historically. And at the same time, with all the benefits that we know around the environment and the good work it does there.
Well, Cradle-to-Cradle really optimizes design so that not only do you make products in a more efficient way, but also have less environmental impact to our end users and customers. And in our case, we're actually able to reclaim these materials and repurpose them back into our products, or even to develop new products and new businesses for sure.
Before you get into the next video, I just wanted to point out Kurt Zacharias, who was the head of Delta Developments, who you saw speaking about how successful it had been for them in the financial crisis. The Park 2020 development that Delta Developments has built next to Schiphol Airport in the Netherlands is sitting in a sea of empty buildings. The Park 2020 development is completely 100% occupied, but it is sitting in a sea of empty buildings, and the developers attribute Cradle-to-Cradle to that. So I'll come back to that later in my presentation.
You really have heard of it. Cradle-to-Cradle. Perhaps you're wondering, what is that? Well, here is an explanation. About 165 3,000 years ago, the first Homo sapiens started to evolve into who we are now, consumers. In 1804, Earth hosted 1 billion people. Now we have increased to over 6.7 billion, and every day around 200,000 people join us on this planet. In modern culture, we are surrounded by commercial products. Products that make our lives pleasurable and more convenient. So imagine there are 6.7 billion of us. This means mass production. Being able to produce all these products means we need resources, and lots of them. But there's a problem. During all these years, we've kept on using resources, but using without thinking of reusing has led to a potential problem. The time will come that there will be a resource scarcity sooner than most of us realize. And the other problem is waste. Most companies are still working with a take, make, waste industrial system. Carefully designed products are thrown away quicker than before. There's a clear need to react to these problems. Luckily, they are getting more and more attention from both companies and consumers. 2 strategies can be indicated. Firstly, the strategy to minimize. Use fewer materials. Use less energy because of more energy-efficient technologies, and with that, reduce the carbon footprint. But this still only postpones the moment resources will be exhausted, and despite reductions, with an increasing world population, volumes keep growing. You could say this current approach is known as reuse, reduce, and recycle. And though this is a good start, it is only being less bad. Let me introduce strategy 2. Rethink the way we make things and use materials effectively. This is not about being less bad, but about becoming 100% good by improving quality. We can start working from a vision where waste equals food. This is what Michael Braungart and William McDonough have developed and named Cradle-to-Cradle. So, while a good start is to reduce the consumption of materials and stimulate recycling, and minimize the amount of energy used in a product life cycle, Cradle-to-Cradle is about keeping all materials in continuous cycles, stimulating the use of renewable energy only, and celebrating diversity. This requires a different design approach. The design of a product is optimized for its functionality, beauty, and quality to fulfill the need of the customer. But in addition, the design is thought through on how to disassemble it and how the used materials are valuable to nature or as resources for the production of new products. We need to know exactly what materials are being used, because who wants their child to play with toys that are full of hazardous chemicals? In Cradle-to-Cradle design, every part of the product is designed with the intention of bringing it back in the technical cycle or biological cycle. Imagine that we no longer use materials, but we borrow them instead. Then, waste would no longer exist. Apart from thinking about materials, Cradle-to-Cradle design also considers 2 other important aspects. Firstly, stimulate the use of renewable energy only. Did you know that every day the sun radiates more energy than the world has used since time began? Using only renewable energy means we can use it endlessly. Secondly, celebrate diversity. Look around you. Look at nature as the best example of diversity. Flora and fauna adapt to local situations and make use of local resources. With Cradle-to-Cradle design, companies can differentiate with innovative products and make money with 100% good stuff, designed for its functionality, beauty, and quality. Also, they will profit from cost savings and added value. Who benefits? You. Because wouldn't it be great if our children and children's children can enjoy the same quality of life or better because we set good intentions and have redesigned the way we make things? This is what motivates us. Rex. Inspire, create, act. Cradle-to-Cradle is a registered trademark of NBDC.
Okay, so that's the Cradle-to-Cradle in 5 minutes. And you saw at the end of that video this Regs logo. Regs is actually a design firm in the Netherlands who took some Cradle-to-Cradle training, and after the training came up with that video and worked with us to put it together. So that was actually a concrete example of what happens when you get some innovative people taking some Cradle-to-Cradle training and then running off and doing it on their own. So it's a very nice example. There are a few things that I would like to emphasize to you coming out of these videos. The first one is that Cradle-to-Cradle is more than just a philosophy. It consists of 3 levels. The first level is the philosophy, which gives us the framework in which to openly debate basically the role of human beings on this planet. The second level is the level of operational principles. And those are the 3 principles that were explained to you in the video. The third level is practical application tools, and there are many of these, and I actually am going to describe to you one of the newer application tools that is being developed in the Netherlands. So when you're thinking about Cradle-to-Cradle, you can think on those levels: philosophy, application principles, and application tools. These are really the 3 levels at which it operates. Now, if there is one message that I would like to leave you with today regarding Cradle-to-Cradle, especially after all that you've been through today already, it is the distinctive characteristics of Cradle-to-Cradle compared to the traditional approaches to sustainability. And there are basically 2 important distinctions. The first one is Cradle-to-Cradle is an innovation platform for improving quality. So before you get to quantifying things, it is a qualitative paradigm that focuses on improving the quality of materials, the quality of energy, and the quality of life processes. These are the 3 areas that we focus on for quality improvement. So for example, if you're talking about recycled content, in Cradle-to-Cradle, what you would talk about is what is the quality of the recycled content so that you can recycle it at the same level of quality and not to downcycle it. And then you have to get into the application tools, of course, to define the quality in those products so that they can be recycled at the same level of quality. So quality is the core emphasis of Cradle-to-Cradle. It is first a qualitative paradigm. After that, you can measure it. The second thing is, it's about being actively beneficial. So not about being less bad, not about reducing impacts, not about minimizing ourselves, but on celebrating our existence here on this planet as human beings and finding ways to be actively beneficial. So these are the 2 primary characteristics of Cradle-to-Cradle that distinguishes generally in the marketplace as well. Now, what I would like to do here is just take a moment to address some of the very good points that were made in the reports from your work sessions. Our group participated quite a bit in the development of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation McKinsey Circular Economy Report that was released last year at the Davos Economic Forum. And this has really resulted in an explosion of discussion about this so-called circular economy. But actually, I think the representative who talked about it was quite right in saying it's really not just about the circular economy, but also about circular business models. And when you look at business models, you will see clearly they are not circular. And actually, they never will be. Because business models are about relationships between users of products and materials, rather than having to always take your own stuff back. And in the models that we have looked at, it is quite clear that the success of materials pathways in the circular economy will be through continuous loops rather than closed loops. Continuous loops occur when a product that is used in one process becomes a resource for a product in another. And the reality of business today is that 90% of the business processes that go on work in that way, in continuous loops rather than in closed loops. Closed loops tend to lead towards closed thinking, whereas continuous loops give you an opportunity to innovate in business because they give you this possibility to find multiple users for your products and your streams. So that's a very important difference when you're looking at this definition of the so-called circular economy and closing the loops. It's really a continuous loops. And finally, in the overall approach to Cradle-to-Cradle, it's not about getting to zero. I know that earlier in the conference you heard about the aim of zero emissions and getting to zero, but it's really not about that. The intention of zero emissions is a good one, and there is no question that over the past 20 years a lot has been learned in quantification when we have attempted to reach zero or head towards it. But it is clear from the last 3 climate conferences and from everything that is coming out of India and China today that we have failed to prevent the acceleration of emissions with the zero approach. And for that reason, our conclusion has been that taking the beneficial approach of really having a beneficial footprint is the most successful possibility for business and government to proceed. And that's what Cradle-to-Cradle is all about. Now, there are 3 pieces of information I want to give you also coming out of your presentations, which I found very good. The first one is the Designing Out Landfills initiative that is happening in the UK right now. Why is this important? The next 25 years of materials flows will be decided in the UK in the next 2 years. This is because the UK government is being forced by EU regulations to transit away from landfills, and you have 2 distinct possibilities. One is to go into a true recycling at the same level of quality economy, or you can go to the incineration economy. If you go to the incineration economy, you will lose the benefits of all your materials flows for the next 25 years because incinerators are built to have a lifetime of 25 years, and they create a giant suction effect as they have in continental Europe, which kills innovation in the recycling sector. And you've heard earlier that Germany has been very successful, at certain regulations on air quality. Unfortunately, they've also been very successful at creating this enormous incineration monster, which has actively been killing off recycling initiatives for quite some time. The UK has an opportunity right now to leap over that barrier to go transit directly from landfills to recycling at the same level of quality economy. And I would encourage your group to focus on this initiative because it is the UK government who has actually launched this initiative, and they're looking for help. They came here to the Netherlands, and we organized a group for them to tell them what is being done here on the recycling economy, and they're really looking for support, and I think that your group could do a lot to support them to do that. The second thing is, if you're looking for some practical examples of good materials use and good approaches to the beneficial footprint, you might want to take a tour to the Netherlands sometimes and see the city of Venlo, who is currently building their new city hall according to Cradle-to-Cradle principles. Park 2020 that you saw mentioned in the video that is just outside of Schiphol Airport. And the third one is a series of clean air schools that are being developed in the Netherlands in association with Desso, who have invented a carpet that actively cleans the air. As well, 2/3 of the Cradle-to-Cradle certified materials are actually in the building industry. So there's a big opportunity right now to implement Cradle-to-Cradle certified materials in architecture and in area development with these materials that over the last 15 years have been certified according to the Cradle-to-Cradle paradigm. Even though certification is just a small part of Cradle-to-Cradle, it is really an important one to get the construction industry going in the right direction. Finally, I wanted to tell you that this month we're launching in the Netherlands, but globally, the Registry of Cradle-to-Cradle Inspired Elements in Building Developments at the Rotterdam School of Management at Erasmus University. And this is designed to celebrate and encourage the introduction of beneficial elements into buildings. So now that I've run way over my time already, and I haven't gotten to my presentation yet, but it's mercifully short, what I wanted to do now is to show you the important link between being beneficial and materials, because we're going to run out of materials before we run out of energy. And I'm wondering if I could ask Mark now to play this Materials Passports video that was done by Maersk Shipping, which is the world's largest container shipping company, and they are going to do all their new container ships according to Cradle-to-Cradle. Martin?
Yeah. Kicking off right now. As you can hear.
Maersk Line implementará el sistema de reciclaje más completo para los nuevos buques gigantes de la clase AAA. El sistema identificará cada tuerca y tornillo de los gigantes de 60.000 toneladas, permitiendo el reciclaje de la mayoría de los materiales, así como la eliminación segura del resto. Todos los materiales de los barcos serán marcados y numerados, separando el acero de bajo grado y alto, el cableado de cobre y los materiales y residuos peligrosos. Una vez clasificados, será posible volver a utilizar casi todos los materiales para buques nuevos, lo que convertirá el desguace peligroso y contaminante en una cosa del pasado.
Well, that was quite funny. That was a Spanish interpretation of a Danish company that was supposed to be in English. However, you get the message. Basically, Maersk is in the process of designing their ships, and I'm sure that many of you are aware of these terrible problems that occur in Bangladesh and India when these ships are deconstructed. Maersk has really taken a leadership position in this and has a disassembling ships. Their new ships, which will be the largest container ships in the world, are going to be designed according to Cradle-to-Cradle principles, and they are going to come apart as described to you in the video. Now, why is this so important? And this brings me to the first two title slides. And Martin, if you could bring those up.
Yeah. Okay, we're all ready.
Okay, I think that's the second slide, that's the third slide. If you could go back to the first slide. There we go. Okay, this is a bit of a joke, but it's also a little bit serious. The circular, closed-loop, blue-green, passive, neutral, zero-footprint, bio-based performance economy. In the past years, we have seen an explosion in systematic approaches to the business of environment. So everything from the circular economy to closed loops, the blue economy that Gunter Colley has just published, the green economy, the passive economy, the neutral zero footprint economy, and of course the bio-based economy, and most recently the performance economy. So the thing that ties all of these things together is that everyone's confused about what they are. There's a real difficulty in getting a systematic approach to aligning them in a practical way. And so at the Rotterdam School of Management and also at EPEA, which is the founding scientific organization for Cradle-to-Cradle in Hamburg, started by Professor Michael Brongard, we looked at this and we said, well, what is the missing link that might bring all of these things together? And of course, the missing link is materials. And your group quite rightly reported today that the tracking of these materials through these different types of green, blue, and closed loop circular economies is actually a real challenge. And so, next slide, please. And maybe you could turn the camera a bit because I can't see the screen. There we go. Thank you. So, what we have developed here in the Netherlands over the past few years is an approach called nutrient certificates and materials passports. You saw the materials passports video from Maersk. This actually came out of a paper that was done in 2003 originally that talked about putting materials passports out there as a new business paradigm and, as you see in the subtitle, a counterpart to emissions trading. And this is the key point. Next slide, please. So the funny thing is that we have all types of nutrient declarations for things like food, for example, and this is, an example of that you see in the UK all the time, that is on the back of packaging. Next slide, please. And we also see it on drugs. Quite a bit of detail on what is in there. Most people, of course, don't have the faintest idea what it is, but nonetheless, it's still there, and there has been a lot of successful pressure on the pharmaceuticals industry to have open declarations of this, especially to make sure that you don't have drugs interacting with each other in the wrong way. Next slide, please. So, the question is, why can't we do the same thing for other types of products, including buildings? And just one little nice example that's happening here in the Netherlands, and I think is probably also happening with government buildings in the UK, where the government is actually ahead of the private sector, is that a lot of the government buildings, because of bureaucracy, are actually tracking the materials that are in their buildings through their maintenance records. This is what we found. And a lot of the private sector buildings don't even have that. So when you look into the government buildings, actually, you might find a very elegant model for a platform where we can begin to track the voyage of materials through buildings. Now, this is very important, and the reason we're talking about buildings here, although it also applies to products that are in buildings, is that, as you know, buildings account for somewhere between 40 and 60% of the material flows in our society. And when you include the materials that flow through buildings during their use period, that percentage even goes up very significantly. So all of these things that you see here, designed for disassembly, biological nutrients, defined content, technical nutrients that were described in the video, the first thing you have to do is know what you have. And that can be done if you develop an approach to materials passports. Next slide, please. Now, the problem that we have today with emissions trading certificates is that they are fundamentally based on a less bad paradigm, where we want to minimize and reduce and offset our bad effects, etc., etc. So it's basically a compensation for negative effects, and it has a big problem. The problem is that there are market distortions created by non-traceable materials like CO2 that is very hard to find after it comes out of a smokestack. As well, governments are doing the same thing with emissions trading certificates that they have done to try and solve the financial crisis. Print more of them. And this has resulted in huge market distortions and a very problematic situation for emissions trading that creates an extremely volatile and untrustworthy situation. So the question is, how do you solve that? Now, there have been attempts. Next slide, please. And some of these attempts have been environmental product declarations, or EPDs, that probably many of you are familiar with. But again, they catalog the negative environmental impacts of a product based on life cycle assessments, which also are based on minimizing impacts. The same thing is true of material data safety sheets, or MSDS, which contain basically what's wrong with the product and how you have to handle the nasty things in it, but not necessarily what's right about it. Next slide, please. So the concept is to basically design a type of nutrient certificate based on the 3 cradle-to-cradle principles that you saw in the video. So everything is a nutrient for something else, which is waste equals food. So nutrients are nutrients is the most important one. The other two, which is current solar income and biodiversity, I'm not going to cover as much here. Here we're really focusing on these, everything being a resource for something else. Next slide, please.
Douglas, I'll have to ask you to kind of whiz through it if you could, because we're going to be running out of time. Have you got many more slides?
Yeah, actually, I'm almost finished.
Fantastic, fantastic.
Okay, just 2 more minutes. So, nutrient certificates are a set of data describing the defined characteristics of materials and products that give them a value for recovery and reuse. And actually, I don't have to go through the other slides because this is the most important thing. And what I would like to tell you today is that this is actively being implemented right now in at least 3 building developments in Europe that we are working on. The first one is Park 2020, who are actively developing these certificates to try and establish a new value paradigm for materials in buildings. So instead of at the end of the life of the building is a demolition liability, it can become a material asset. And that is the key change in the valuation paradigm. The city of Venlo is also exploring nutrient certificates for its new city hall and its other developments. Now, I'm just going to skip to the very end. You can actually come down to the final slide, if you could, just for a second. If you are interested in learning more about these nutrient certificates, keep going, that's it. The Springer Encyclopedia of Sustainability, Science and Technology, which has been published this month. It's a huge encyclopedia. It sells for €6,000, and in there is a 50-page article by myself, Katja Hansen, and Michael Braungart. It's Katja Hansen's concept, nutrient certificates. And if anyone would like to receive a copy of this for academic review, I would be more than happy to send it to you, so you don't have to pay €6,000 to purchase the encyclopedia. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry for that. Very quick question, whilst we've still got Douglas online. Anybody want to? I could spend another 2 hours with you discussing that, but we can't do that just now. Any questions?
Well, let's do it sometime.
Yeah, I'd be keen to. Have you got your contact details on here?
Yeah, we'll share.
Yeah, we have.
You can share them. Right, okay, well thank you to Douglas and for Martin to setting that up. So,
Thanks, Douglas. We'll catch up very soon on Skype.